Hey, what's up, everyone? You are watching or listening to my comic book journey podcast. I'm your host, KNDY, and we're going to go back to February 1994 for the Image Comics title, Gen 13. This one is a mini series, actually. Um, this one was a story featuring a story by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi, pencils by J. Scott Campbell, inks by Alex Garner, colors by Joe Chiodo, color separators Ben Fernandez, Joe Dunn, and Jessica Ruffner, letters by Chris Eliopoulos, ink assist by Sandra Hope, color assist by Wendy Fouts, Monica Bennett, and Paige Apfelbaum, and editors by Deborah, Marvin, and Bill Kaplan. So let's go ahead and start. If there was one Image Comics title that really stood out for me in the mid 90s, aside from the main flagship titles that began in the beginning of Image Comics, it would have to be Jim Lee and Brandon Choi's Gen 13. Of course, Jim Lee was famous for X Men. I mean, the first issue being the best selling comic book of all time, according to Guinness World Records at the time. He penciled and co wrote that, and my gosh, his work was just like he had the Midas touch. And he also had the popular Image Comics series Wildcats. As for Brandon Choi, he worked for Wildstorm Comics, which was an independent company established by Jim Lee until it became a publishing imprint of DC Comics in 1999. And then you had another teammate, part of the crew, known for his artwork, and that was illustrator J. Scott Campbell, who also helped co-found Gen 13 and would eventually become a writer for the series as well. So, back in 1994, a 5-issue miniseries was released, followed by a second volume which lasted through issue 76. The second volume ran from 1995 to 2002, while a new third volume was written by Chris Claremont and penciled by Ali Garza, and that would be created at that time. But then the series was received another reboot in 2006 with writer Gail Simone and art from Talent Caldwell. The Wildstorm titles would be incorporated into the DC universe, and member Caitlin Fairchild would be featured in a new series titled The Ravagers as part of DC's The New 52, and lasted for about 12 issues, 2012 to 2013. So Gen 13 has been kept alive, relevant, and incorporated into that DC universe. But since I haven't followed the adventures of Gen 13 since the Image Comics years in the 90s, and prior to 2000, I really had no idea of how the characters were treated, especially with DC. But I do know that when the miniseries and the regular series debuted, the series was definitely a must-buy for me. Definitely was one of the harder comic books to find because everyone wanted to get their hands on Gen 13 because it was a Jim Lee creation. Or anything with Jim Lee's name was popular, and especially with J. Scott Campbell's artwork. And yeah, it was very popular. Very hard to find because everyone wanted it. But as for the series, it began. It starts out in 1979, and you see a husband and wife, Stephen and Rachel, and they have two children, Matthew and Nicole. They're seen running away from a group of men with high tech outfits. The wife, Rachel, is gunned down and is killed, while Stephen is able to use his powers in defense, just giving enough time for his children, Matthew and Nicole, to escape. Stephen tells his children to run, but then we start to see the group with high tech outfits shooting at Stephen and getting killed right in front of his son Matthew. Fast forward to 1994, and the story is now set in Princeton, New Jersey, and Caitlin Fairchild is attending college and has a 4.0 grade average, and she hopes to graduate with her advanced degree in computer science the following year. She is awakened in her dorm by men in suits telling her that she has been accepted to the Gen 13 program, and they need to leave immediately to process her into the program. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the I.O. SciTech Bureau office, we find out that the Genesis project has been reactivated and learn that something bad happened in the past with the Gen 12 project and also with Team 7. And their test subjects have also been included. While they're looking at the tests to find out who is Gen positive, the test subjects have been isolated at a Death Valley compound. We are then introduced to Matthew and Nicole, the kids that the story began with. They are now grown up, and they are now processing the new test subjects, and they are now responsible for finding the Gen positives that are active. As Caitlin is undergoing rigorous training, she starts to suspect something is wrong and doesn't even understand why she's undergoing so much physical training for a college stipend. What she thinks is a training school, she meets Bobby Burnout Lane, Roxanne Freefall Spalding, and Percival Edmund Grunge Chang. But what happens when these four go out for a late stroll around the premises? Gen 13 is a series that features a lot of action, a lot of humor, and wonderful artwork. I'll show you some of that artwork right here. I feel that when Jim Lee worked on X-Men, he had to work within Marvel's confines while trying to update and establish existing characters. With Gen 13, he and Brandon Choi were able to develop new characters with new abilities that I'm not sure why, but the Dark Government is doing some really shading things behind the scenes, and these kids are considered as trouble. With many more awesome issues that came right after the miniseries and a solid series that began not long after, the original Image Comics Gen 13 was surely one of the awesome new series to come out at the time, and definitely something I did enjoy. So definitely check it out. You can find Gen 13 probably on eBay, probably easily, but it's definitely one of the coolest series to read. Had a lot of fun. I can remember just trying to search for the comic books, and my gosh, it was like competitive because it was so hard to find. And comic books only ordered so many. I think one of the problems was, of course, you got to read the whole Image comic situation that happened in the mid-90s, especially when it came to receiving the comic books and how it affected comic book stores, comic book shops at the time when it came to solicitations and all that. But for the most part, this issue was pretty cool. Gen 13 was actually one of the few Image comics that did come out regularly and was on schedule. Can't say so much for the other titles, though. But overall, you all take care, and I'll see you later. Wink, wink, and see you later, everyone. Bye-bye.